Count us down, folks. Welcome to another spooky edition of Missouri Swagger.
They're all a little spooky.
Episode 14. I'm Dennis Hopeless.
And I'm Cullen Bunn.
Jesus Christ. Dropping the ball already. Just right out of the gate, both of us.
Yeah, well. Welcome to Missouri Swagger, spooky edition.
Yeah, we're going to do our Halloween episode. Like most of our episodes, it's because we didn't have an idea until we just got on here. And it's October.
It is, yeah, and Halloween's rapidly approaching, Dennis.
And we are...
We've seen costumes you've worn in the past, so we know that you love Halloween.
I do. I'm a big fan of Halloween. The biggest problem that I have now is I have a lot of Halloween costume ideas that happen throughout the course of the year. And so I think I know what my costume's going to be. And then usually when it comes down to it, it's whatever I can make in the amount of time I have left.
Right.
This year, Aaron Gillespie is having a 90s WWE wrestler themed birthday party the week.
So you can just use any one of the costumes you've worn in the past.
Well, yeah, I'm going to wear...
Wait, what was your wrestling name when you were in middle school and wrestling in your friend's backyard?
I was the juvenile delinquent.
Yeah, juvenile delinquent. There you go. You should do that. Dress as the juvenile delinquent.
The classroom disruption was my move. Yeah. I'm gonna wear Razor Ramon again, which I hadn't tried on the trunks in 2 years, 3 years, however long it's been. And yeah, I had a little more dad flab than I did the last time I wore it. So I'm on a diet and exercise plan that's a little more stringent than usual for the next couple of days to try to make sure that I don't jiggle that much.
I get it.
Aren't you glad? But also, last time I didn't have chest hair, and I've grown my bushy chest hair out.
Do we really have to talk about chest hair every episode?
Wow, this one's about costumes. What do you want me to do?
Get it. Dennis, you hit puberty. Good for you.
No, I just usually get rid of it. I like to take an aim of flame, like a long lighter, like you used to light a campfire, and just shoot it off. So it was like a more natural...
I swear to God. Every time I do one of these episodes, I forget why I decided to do these with you.
You love me.
Yeah, all right.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about horror, mainly because I want to hear you say horror over and over.
Everybody wants to. They love it. I'm going to go through the entire episode and not say it once, just to spite you all.
Do people bring it up to you?
Yes, they bring up everything I pronounce. Apparently, that's real fun for them.
Well, most of the stuff you pronounce, like, it's charming, but you can understand what the word is. Like, if there's no context, when you say horror, nobody has any clue what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't help them. I don't know. I can't help if people can't understand a simple accent from somewhere around the world. So you are a long-time horror prose writer. Like, you've done that since very early, before your comics career, right? Like, that's a thing. That's kind of where you got your nut initially. I presume, because of that you have been a fan of horror fiction, horror movies and such your whole life. Is this true from your early age? Yes, from an early age. I don't know that I would have said that I was a fan of scary movies and stories and stuff when I was well, I didn't like being scared, but for some reason I always liked horror movies, and I said it, damn it. I always liked, I'm going to bleep it out so that no one can hear it. I always liked that kind of thing. From when the time I was very little, I remember sneaking into, my older brother and sister were watching like a midnight, monster movie or whatever. And I remember crawling into the living room and hiding behind the couch and watching around the side of the couch and watching. It was one of the Hammer vampire movies. And I remember watching that. And I also remember doing something similar and watching a movie that just really messed me up. I mean, it messed with my head, and I didn't, for years and years, I didn't know first of all, I didn't know what kind of movie it was. And I didn't know what the movie was. Later, I found out it was a movie called Quartermass in the Pit,
which was another Hammer movie, but it's very very science-based, very cosmic, slow burn, cosmic horror. And that movie messed me up. They had a spaceship, and it had a weird devil skull in it. It was just horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. But yeah. But I've always liked, always liked that. I always liked horror comics. Said it again. Damn it. And books, stories. Yeah, I've always been a fan.
My relationship with horror is similar to my relationship with science fiction, where like my dad was a workaholic and we didn't get along super well. He always wanted to like go mow the lawn and chop down trees and stuff. And I was a kid that wanted to sit and eat. So I wasn't that into it. So anything my dad would like sit down and do with me, I really cared about from a young age. So I'm a huge Mad Max fan. I'm really into like Star Trek and science fiction. And my dad really loves horror movies. Also, my mother can't sit through like 45 minutes of something without falling asleep. So she would never watch movies with me because I was dead. And yeah, I think that like lit the spark of it. It's weird though. I was never a nightmares because of something kid. So I liked being scared a lot. Like even from when I was little, I really liked watching horror movies, like jump scares. In Kansas City, we had these haunted houses that are put on in the West Bottoms. They're massive, big deal that we always went to when I was a kid. And I remember the first time I went through without screaming once. I was really proud of myself. Like my whole thing was like, I'm not going to let them scare me. So every year I would try to like be able to go through the whole thing without jumping or screaming and having a straight face, which is a really weird thing to do. You're paying money to have people scare you.
Yeah, you have to embrace it.
Stone face. Yeah, I always loved that stuff. And I don't remember stuff scaring me to the point that I wanted to turn the movie off. Like I don't remember anything like that happening until I was about 12. I rented Candyman, and for whatever reason, Candyman scared the fuck out of me. Like I was just terrified of that movie, and I turned it off. And it's weird because at 12 or whatever, I had watched dozens and dozens and dozens of horror movies and never had a problem for whatever reason. So I think of Candyman as being the scariest movie ever. I guarantee it's not. Remembering what it's about and the scenes that I saw in it, I'm sure I would laugh if I watched it now, but for whatever reason.
It still ranks up there. It's actually not one of my favorite horror movies. I haven't seen it since I saw it, when it came out on, VHS or whatever. I think I saw it then, but I haven't seen it since. I was actually considering rewatching that this Halloween season because I haven't seen it in so long. But
I remember there's a scene with poop on walls. If someone writes something.
Yeah, that's early on, and I think that's early in it, but I don't know. Maybe it's not.
I turned the movie off, Cullen. I have not seen the entire film. I was terrified.
The poop on wall scared you too bad?
Guess so. I don't know what it was.
It's recognized as one of the, as a great horror movie. So, I don't, I think it's fine. I just don't, it's never been one that I felt I needed to see again. But until recently, I've decided I wanted to watch it again.
It's interesting you talk about the Hammer stuff because I think that's the one big blind spot for me in my horror. Other than since my kids were born, I've seen almost no movies. But yeah, I've never, for whatever reason, they didn't have the Hammer films at Blockbuster when I was a kid, so I rented.
Well, yeah, I think they were gone for a long, long time. You couldn't rent them or anything here.
Right.
They weren't really available in the States, readily available in the States. You could see them on, some TV shows like midnight movie marathons and stuff. But it wasn't until, I say relatively recently, but it's been, a couple of decades. It's been a decade or more now, a couple of decades that they came out again, where you could get them like in the clamshell, VHS boxes and all that.
Anything's available.
Yeah, now anything, yeah.
It's interesting.
Except Quartermass in the Pit. I can't get that here in the States. You have to get it. It's only available on other region DVDs, I think, which is frustrating to me because apparently there were 3 of these movies, and I want to see them all because they were such a big, they were so terrifying for me. The first, or that one was. So I want to see all 3 of them.
Bootlegged it?
What's that?
Nobody's bootlegged it?
I don't support bootlegging, Dennis.
Well, sure. If you don't have any other options.
Yeah, I can wait. I'll be all right. I used to buy back when Godzilla movies weren't available here. I would go to the toy show in St. Louis and I'd buy like bootleg copies of the Godzilla movies because I couldn't see them anywhere else. They were just bad copies of a Godzilla movie. But even then, I didn't like doing it. I mean, I'm not going to buy a bootleg Quartermass in the Pit. That does not. That doesn't show respect to Professor Quartermass.
I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
I don't.
Yeah, it's interesting that I feel like horror movies have had a resurgence when I was in high school, because it was a period of time where in like the 80s and early 90s those horror movie franchises got really big and ridiculous and kind of burned people out.
Well, yeah, well, just horror in general. Horror novels were huge in the 80s. I mean, it was just a skyrocket, rocket. And then come towards the end of the late 80s, early 90s, it just started tapering off. There were publishers that were, publishing all these amazing horror novels, but it was just glutting the market. And then people started publishing crap horror novels. And I remember when I first, I was working at a Walden Books, and we actually, not only did we have a horror section, which is pretty much unheard of in bookstores now, we had like 3 bays of horror novels. And it was the number one selling horror section in the company across the board at all the Walden Books, because we curated it and actually people liked, the books we would put up there rather than just throwing direct up there.
Well, and they had you there doing, I'm sure you were doing some sort of Cullen Bunn song and dance to sell people.
Every chance I got, I'd sell them on some horror nonsense. It's the way I pronounce the word, I think, is what they really liked about it.
Well, but at the time, were you here or were you still in Carolina?
That was in Missouri. So that was here in Springfield. We had in Springfield, Missouri, we had the number one horror section and the number one role-playing section in company. Because of
surprising no one. Turns out you're a fine bookseller.
Yeah, well, I was a fine bookseller. Thank you very much.
Weirdly, that's part of your job now, is to sell books.
I'm not good at it anymore. So.
This man's con setup is this crazy castle of books that he builds, and
I can't do that anymore. I can't do it anymore.
Physically moving the books around, or what?
Yeah, I hate it. It drives me nuts to drag those books. I'm gonna bring just a couple of books from now on. So, and I'm gonna just charge really high prices for one book. Yeah,
that's smart.
Yeah.
Jasmine showed me this commercial. I'm going to assume it's just an internet commercial, but it is for a pen and a watch that were designed by Sylvester Stallone. And we'll put it in the I'll figure out what it's called, and we'll put the link
in
the comments so you guys can see it. But yeah, it's this amazing commercial that I won't even try to describe. You just have to see it. And I was very curious.
I want that pen and that watch.
Oh, absolutely. But while I was watching it, I'm like, how many pens do they have to sell to pay back the budget of this fucking commercial? And then I saw how much the pens cost, and now I understand. You have to sell two.
Yeah. But no, yeah. Back to that horror. There, the sort of the rise and fall of horror, because it was so big in the '80s, and then it kind of died off, and then we're having a resurgence now. It's back. There's a lot of it, and there's a lot, and it all comes from the same place. When there's a lot of good stuff, more people want to make good horror movies. And
sure. We were talking earlier, Desmond and I were talking earlier about how horror movies seem to respond to the political climate of the time. Like the kind of horror has to do with what's going on culturally or whatever, and that's kind of an ebb and flow to it. And I wonder if that's the case with horror. I mean, it's the case with all fiction, but because horror movies make money, they're cheap to produce, and you can get them done relatively quickly. And so it makes sort of like how South Park can be topical because they make it so fast, that horror movies have a more topical.
Yeah. I mean, movies in particular, it's tough for a movie to be responsive to the times if it's, if it takes, 4 years to make. But yeah, most horror movies, not all of them, but most of them can be can be, put together, relatively quickly and inexpensively, like you said. So yeah, they can be a little more, they can have their thumb a little more on the pulse of what's going on. But then at the same time, a good horror movie or a good horror story is just gonna, they're going to key off of real, long-lasting, evergreen feelings of fear and dread that are in the audience's eyes and and minds and hearts or whatever. So I think some of these some of the fears these things tackle are just ingrained in us. I mean, it's just what we can't help but be afraid of some of these things.
Right. Well, that's why they're effective, right? That's why we can kind of be scared in the same way over and over and over again. And it feels fresh. I also think that's why there's like the scares oftentimes are the same kind of scares that in other movies, but the concepts tend to, and the themes that you love themes tend to relate to what's going on.
So
which is weird. It makes stuff like the torture porn period that happened in the, I don't know, when was it, the early aughts?
Yeah, it's right around, what was it, Hostel that really kicked that off, or Saw that really kicked that off in a big way?
Saw, yeah. And when Saw's a good example of how quickly they can make those things. So they made one a year.
Yeah. They were really turning them out. But yeah.
I feel like they've done that with The Purge, and The Purge is pretty political too, conceptually, and then it's gotten more and more.
I was saying, I think maybe it was the second Purge that was about an election. Like there was an election going on, and during the Purge or something, and they were trying to use the Purge to kill political opponents. So yes, that one was a little heavy-handed, maybe.
My favorite thing about the first Purge is the concept that you sell people safety, but you're not actually safe. Like there's nothing you can do to make yourself safe.
Yeah.
Like the thing that, I don't know, just watch The Purge, you'll understand what I'm saying. But yeah, it's interesting that they just keep making, it's like video games. Walked by some video game setup when I was in New York, and there was like a 9th sequel to a game that I had forgotten existed 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They just, people like things, and they keep making new things.
So do you celebrate Halloween? Do you watch a lot of movies in the build up to Halloween? Because I try to every year.
It's weird. I don't usually watch scary things. Like I like scary things. Like I love horror movies, and it's always been a big part of my movie watching life. But for whatever reason, Halloween for me was always about cosplay. And it was rarely scary stuff. Like I don't remember. Like I've maybe been like a monster twice ever. My life. Like I was a Silverhawk when I was in 2nd grade or whatever, and it's always been that. It's always been some sort of weird pop culture thing. And once I got old enough to be into nostalgia from my youth, it was all that. So like in 11th grade, I went to high school dressed like Han Solo, and literally no one else in school had a costume on. That was an embarrassing day, but
yeah, that's a rough one, dude.
People like to be cool apparently in high school. This is a memo I did not get until my
yeah, I don't know that I was never a costume guy. I mean, I wore costumes, but I was never, and still I'm not. I'm just not into the costume side of Halloween, which is weird because for a while I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist. I was really into making grotesque, making facial appliances and things, and transforming people. But I never wanted to be in a costume. Yeah, I just, it's not. I love other people's costumes, and I can respect a great costume, but they're such a pain in the ass that I just don't. I don't do it. Last year, my wife almost disavowed me because we went to a great Halloween party, and I was super excited. And I got this awesome Deadpool costume. This is when I was writing Deadpool and I cared about the character. But I got this awesome Deadpool costume, and I decided it was too clean. So I took it, and over weeks I painted this thing, and I I dirtied it up. I ran it through the streets to make it look worn like Deadpool's costume would look. And it looked, this costume looked really awesome. And Cindy decided that she was going to dress as Blind Al, Deadpool's sidekick from the movie.
Right.
We went to the Halloween party, and I was there about 5 minutes, and I realized this costume was going to kill me because it was so hot and so miserable that I just had to get out of the costume. I was like, I just can't do it. I can't wear this thing. And then, so I get out of my Deadpool costume, and I had to change of clothes with me because I had a feeling this was going to happen. But then Cindy just looks like a really insensitive costume.
Because when she wasn't an accessory to your costume.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. So she was real angry with me the rest of the party.
Yeah, masks are a rookie mistake. I learned that in college. I went as Destro, and I had like a full pleather jacket with a crushed velvet red. It was the original action figure costume of Destro.
Right.
And the reason I built this costume is I was looking at masks online, and I found a rubber robot man mask that was exactly Destro's mask. It was perfect.
Right.
And I bought that, and I made to the nines. I bought airsoft guns and painted them to match, and I had like I made little grenade things that I put on the knee or wherever the hell they were, and then went to the bars because I was in college, so I went to the bars. Number one, no one had any idea who I was because I was in Manhattan, Kansas, and like G.I. Joe nostalgia hadn't taken off. So one guy yelled at me from across the street, "Destro!" And number two, in order to drink and not die from heat exhaustion, I had to take the mask off.
Right.
The only costume I know of that is hotter than that one, my mom made. My friend Nick was a very somber, like emo kid in high school, and I called him Pooh. His nickname was Pooh Bear because it made him mad, and I thought it was funny to pester this child. And so one year for Halloween in college, he came from the Art Institute to visit in Manhattan. And I said that if I made him a costume, would he wear it? And he said yes. So my mom and I made him a Winnie the Pooh costume. And this thing was felt and had like a padded belly. And he looked amazing in it because he had like long black hair and looked at this somber face. And then his body was a giant Winnie the Pooh. But he told me that it was too hot to wear, and I made him wear it the whole night. And a few years later, I wore it to a Halloween costume party. Had it on maybe 10 minutes. That is the hottest thing I've ever been in my life. It's like wearing an electric blanket around. So I definitely tortured him for the whole time he had it on.
Yeah, I did a costume in I don't know, late 20s maybe. I did Snake Plissken, and you said you were working out for your Razor Ramon, and that costume I planned for months in advance, and I worked out like a insane person before I put that costume on because it was a sleeveless shirt, and I wanted to at least look like I had done a push-up once in my life.
Right.
And I had a wig, I had the Snake Plissken hair and everything. That's my favorite costume ever, and I don't even think I took a picture of it that night because
that was a problem with me in college. Is I would get too drunk and then not get photos taken because I had some pretty cool costume. Yeah, there are no photos exist, and you lose pieces. My mom has a closet in her basement that has all of the costumes we've made together over the years, which at this point is 2 years worth. And yeah, there's a black period in college where there's a bunch of pieces missing because I was in Manhattan and drunk and didn't break stuff. Also, I was broke, so I'd repurpose things. Like I'd repaint boots and stuff to wear them.
Right.
The year that I was Guy Gardner, have I talked about this on the show before? I was Guy Gardner one year.
You talked about Guy Gardner. I don't know if it was your costume or not, but go ahead.
Guy Gardner is my favorite Green Lantern. For a long time, I said he was my favorite comic book character, but now that I've written a bunch of other ones, I don't know if that holds true. But I bought a Betty Page wig, and I cut the long hair part off, and just like I had like a mow, red
That's
mow,
awesome.
Cut. And I bought motocross boots because I wanted boots that were like, he had those big chunky boots, and I wanted them to look like space gear. So I bought these giant plastic, like made so you can wreck a motorbike without breaking your ankles boots. So
That's
like
awesome.
they banded all at the toe, and they have like these clamps on them. And then I went through and covered each section with green patches so that the whole thing was green and it matched my vest. Anyway, I found wearing those around that you can't walk in motorcar. They're not for walking. They're for keeping your legs safe when you're on a bike. So I had to walk like a Tin Man from Wizard of Oz the whole night.
Awesome. I love it. So you don't do haunted houses anymore, though?
I haven't been in years. I love them. Now I think I would lean into screaming. I'm excited for my boys to be old enough to take them. But they're at the age where like a witch villain on a toddler cartoon show just stopped scaring them. Like they're just past the point where they're scared by simple stuff on TV. So I think we're a few years removed. But
you know what they do here? There's a couple of haunted houses here in town, and 1 or 2 weekends out of the season, they do them during like early or late afternoon, and they turn all the lights on, and instead of monsters jumping out at you, they have like characters who are there to help you, and they send you on a little scavenger hunt through the haunted house for kids, which I think is awesome for kids who don't want to be scared, but still want to do a haunted house. That's kind of fun.
Does it kind of ruin the mystique for you if you're there seeing the lights on?
Well, I like the decorations, and I've been through these haunted houses probably. These haunted houses have been in business over 40 years.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure I've been to them at least 12 times each. I mean, I go every year, and they don't change a whole lot. You know, the only thing that changes is I'm getting older, and there's a big slide at the end of each of them, and it hurts. Like when I'm getting out, I'm like, oh no, the scariest part of the haunted house is coming up. Physical activity.
Slides are weird because when you're a little kid, you sit your butt on a slide and your ass goes down fast, and it's exciting. But something about adult body mass makes slides not work. Yeah, there's a big. My kids go to this park here that has it's like a giant castle made out of ropes, and so you can climb up inside of it and walk across the top. And my kids, they're small enough that they're scared when they get up there. Like they look down and there's no ground; it's just ropes. So they look down at the ground, and we're 2 stories in the air, and so they need me up there to just like kind of talk them through it and grab their hand or whatever. So I climb up there and I'm up there with them. And they always want me to go down the damn slide, but I can't. Like I sit down on the slide and I just stop. Yeah. So I have to like walk my butt down the slide. I don't know if it's just like I'm bony or if it's that, like my weight there's too much weight distributed over too large a surface area, but slides don't work very well.
Yeah. I don't know.
The haunted houses, they give you like a piece of wax paper so you go faster, right? Like, don't they?
They don't give you anything, but I think someone goes through and sprays Pam on these damn slides because you go down like Chevy Chase and Christmas Vacation when it's like a rocket. But yeah, no, I'm sure they do something to make them faster. Years ago, when my son was 3, we were at some fall festival, and they had a haunted house, and he decided that he was going into that haunted house no matter what. And my kid's very stubborn, and at that age, especially when he wanted to do something, it's like I'm doing it. So I went in advance, and I asked them to please not scare my son too much. And he was still terrified. I had to carry him, and his head's down. He puts his head down as soon as he gets in. He's like, "Nope, this isn't for me." Sure. But we went through, and he'd look up every now and again. I remember it was funny because all these blood-soaked, terrible monsters, and there was Jason Voorhees, and he's just sitting there going, hi, like, and I was like, that's actually a little creepier. Is Jason standing in a spiderweb-filled room, waving?
Because he felt bad that your kid was scared.
Yeah, but I've gone to him since I was a little kid. We had one when I was 5 or 6, I guess. That they would not let the kids. If you were a teenager, you could go upstairs into the scariest part of this house. But otherwise, you had to stay downstairs into the sort of scary part. But I remember that haunted house. They had pigs' heads, and they had them on posts, real pigs' heads. They went to the butcher, got pigs' heads, put them on posts outside the haunted house. That's awesome. And there was a dude in a white sheet, like a ghost costume. I don't know, it was the country. Who knows what kind of white sheet it was? But I like to think it was a ghost running back and forth on top of the house, just running. And just that moment walking in there terrified me. I mean, it was the best. And then I've gone to them almost every year since. I go to haunted houses. I mean, when I was a kid, my friend was son of the preacher, and his church put on a haunted house every year, and we went to that. And then it was terrifying for a church haunted house, it was.
I mean, church is pretty scary anyway. There's some weird imagery. As a little kid, I always was unsettled by the paintings and things in churches.
Well, I guess, but this wasn't just like, I mean, they really went all out on this haunted house. It was, it was a really, spooky haunted house. And we put them on all the time. My dad built houses for a while. And there was a time there was always an unfinished house. And me and a bunch of my friends would just turn that into a haunted house and then invite everybody from school, just to come to the haunted house and go through. And those were, I wouldn't trade those days for anything. They were awesome. I'm going to haunted houses tomorrow. I'm going to St. Louis to go through haunted houses for the weekend. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm pretty booked with weekends, so I want to try and go, but I'm running out of time this year. Just thinking that the scariest place, like the scariest building, because you were talking about the unfinished houses, which is a pretty scary environment.
Right.
When we were in high school, we would break into this it was like an old prison that had been burnt out at some point in the years before, and they built a new prison next to it. So there's like a minimum security prison yard right next to this old building that's all boarded up. But the building had bars on all the doors, and they were like metal doors with bars on the windows. And at some point, somebody took an acetylene torch and cut the bars and bent them down. So you would crawl through a hole, like a 2 foot by 2 foot hole that had bars bent down. You'd pull yourself up and like slide down the bent bars and get inside this building. And then in there was a bunch of burnout prison stuff. So there were like old metal bed frames with the springs and stuff were still there, but there was no cloth on it because it had been burned up. And we would wind our way through this and go to where where the people had made the climb through and get to the roof, and then we would drink beer on the roof. And that should have been terrifying. Like, that's the scariest environment I can imagine, is that. And it was always like one guy with a flashlight in the front, and you were bumping into the backs of your friends, and there'd be other people in there every once in a while. And we'd go to the top, and it's sort of amazing that no one ever got hurt or arrested or assaulted.
Or kidnapped or butchered by a masked maniac.
Those things did happen. They just didn't happen to me.
Right.
But the last time we went up there, I went with a guy that was like a friend of my sister's boyfriend who was an actual criminal, and he started throwing things at the prison guards and calling them names. So when we got out, the prison guards were there waiting for us. And we weren't. Cops were called, and I was sent home. I didn't get in trouble, but that, I think, turned us off of going.
That was it?
Yes. That man later died in a fiery car crash while being chased by the police.
Oh my God.
Long after that. And then when he got out, some high-speed chase and died in a fire. So his life was on a trajectory that should have been pretty obvious for 17-year-old me.
Yeah.
That building is probably the scariest place I've ever been.
No. All right, well, Halloween, watch some scary movies, Dennis, at least. Go to a haunted house. Folks who are watching, watch a scary movie. I'm watching I, Madman tonight, which is a scary movie I haven't seen since it came out in the late 80s, I think, early 90s. But I'm very excited to rewatch that. I'm watching a movie called The Endless, which is sort of a cosmic horror movie that I'm excited about. And then I just have a whole big stack of movies that I feel speak to this time of year. And they don't have to be the best, the most mind-bending horror movie ever. It just has to be a fun horror movie for me. So I'm going to be watching a lot of stuff. I decided recently that I'm going to start collecting horror movies on DVD or Blu-ray again, even though I recently said I'd never buy another DVD or Blu-ray because they're pointless. I now, for some reason, want to collect horror, the best horror movies and
there's
stuff.
So many. I mean, it's a little bit of a different thing to collect, I think, that. Because there's so many. They make so many all the time.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of them aren't really in print anymore. So if you can find new versions, it's like anime was when we were in
Right. Yeah.
Now it's readily available and a thing everybody knows about. But it used to be like this secret society. I feel like old horror movies and weird low-budget horror movies are kind of the same thing.
Right. So I'm gonna, I'm looking forward to watching some. I'm gonna watch some tonight. I've been so busy lately that I'm so tired when I'm done working that I can't even watch a movie, but I'm gonna. I think I'm caught up to the point that I can watch some spooky movies now. So is it time for a swagger story?
Swaggerous, it's your turn.
All right. So last time you told a story about how you were such a villain and what a jerk you were. I'm going to tell you a story inspired. Kyle Strom wanted me to tell this story about maybe the worst thing I've ever done to another human being.
Ooh, I like it already.
Right. So, and it kind of applies to the things we've been talking about. So years ago, I think I've mentioned plenty of times that I used to publish a small press magazine, and I'd go to conventions and set up and try to sell this magazine. And it was a horror-themed stories. And my younger brother got into this hobby of making these life-size zombies for a while. And they were really awesome. He made them out of foam and then latex. He painted them, and they were always dripping gore, and they were always green, fleshy things. Some of them, they looked like something out of a Creepshow movie. And I had this, and I'd take them to conventions with us and set them up at our booth because people would always, oh, can I take a picture with the zombie? Blah, blah, it's just something to have a conversation starter. And so I was driving to a convention, and I had the zombie in the passenger seat of the car. See, one of the zombies. He had this real bulbous skull and an eye, this one ping pong ball eye that would kind of roll around in the socket and stuff. And I had him sitting in the passenger seat. I was bored. I was by myself driving. And as I was driving by cars, I would shake the zombie, and he'd bounce over into the window. And people in the other cars would jump up and, oh, what's going on? Because it wasn't Halloween time. They weren't really expecting a zombie. And that was funny. I was cackling to myself. What fun, what fun. So I start doing it more. Every car I pass, I'm shaking the zombie. And he started bobbling, and the eyeballs bouncing in his head. He's bouncing against the glass. And I'm just driving along, shaking the zombie at every car I pass. And I'm shaking it, and people are jumping and looking at me with these looks of horror. And I think it's the greatest moment. And car after car, I'm doing this, shaking this zombie people.
Right.
As I'm, we're a 2-lane highway. I'm on the left lane and they're in the right lane. And I start thinking to myself, man, there's a lot of cars here. I'm getting a lot of good scares, a lot of scare after scare. And then I start thinking to myself, all these cars have their headlights on. What's going on? And then I realize that I'm shaking this zombie at car after car in a funeral procession. It's I had somehow gotten on the left-hand side, didn't know that I was near a funeral procession, and I'm just driving along, and I drove almost to the hearse, shaking this zombie, laughing and cackling with joy that I'm terrorizing people.
Oh my God, that's my favorite story ever.
It's the worst, hands down, it is the worst thing I've ever done. I mean, and then what do? You're supposed to pull off your, common decency is you pull off the road when a funeral procession comes by. But if I pull off to the left-hand side, all those cars are going to pass me again and look at me accusingly.
Oh my God. What did you do? Just drove past?
I sped up and got the hell out of there as fast as I could.
I mean, it's kind of like when you realize you're going the wrong way down a one-way road. Like, you just got to go to the end of it and turn.
It was like a ball of ice formed instantly in my chest and then shot down into my stomach as I realized what was happening, what I was doing to these people.
That's amazing. That's Missouri Swag, folks.
Thanks, guys. If you like us, subscribe, hit the like button, leave us some reviews on the podcast version.
Yeah, on iTunes. Also, last episode we asked questions about what process stuff you guys wanted to hear for the next process episode, and we got a lot of great comments below. So I'm going to try and do prompts more now so we can have more of a conversation with you guys in the comment section. So tell us your favorite horror movies, what your favorite era is.
What should we be watching? What should we watch?
Yes, yeah. Tell us if you put something on there that we haven't seen, maybe we'll watch and talk about it. But yeah, also I want pictures of Halloween costumes. I'm gonna dig up old ones and I'll show you how my dad belly
gets take a picture of this year's costume. That's a weird sentence. But what I'm saying is I'll take a picture of this year's costume and you'll get to see whether or not I got into Razor Ramon shape in the next 10 days.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'd love to see some Halloween costumes. And yeah, I'll try to dig up some of mine. I don't think I have any really, but I'm gonna look and see.
You still have Deadpool? You gotta put that on, take a picture of it.
I'm not putting that costume on ever again. First of all, I'm pretty sure I've gained 15 pounds since I bought that costume, and I'd be fat Deadpool. But
You're selling me on the idea more. I think that's exactly what you want to do. All right. Well,
thanks, folks.